All right, guys, we are moving along in our next section of notes, and we are going to talk about X-linked, or sometimes called sex-linked inheritance. And so we're going to start with this really short video that will introduce the concept of X-linked or sex-linked, and it'll even show you a cross. So just pay attention to the video for a moment. We'll come back and we'll write some notes down in just a second.
Welcome to Moo Math and Science. In this video, I'd like to talk about X-linked inheritance. What do color blindness, hemophilia, and male pattern baldness all have in common? They are all X-linked traits. An X-linked trait is a trait attached to the X chromosome. Females have 2 chromosomes, and males have an X and a Y chromosome. The X chromosome has roughly 800 genes compared to the Y chromosome, which only has around 70 genes. Let's look at hemophilia, which is a recessive X-linked disease. Here's what the Punnett square looks like for a father who has the disease and a female who is a carrier.
So I'm pausing right here for just a second. We're going to come back to this and we'll see it in our notes in a moment. But anytime we're talking about X-linked or sex-linked traits, they are, as the name suggests, these are traits that are carried exclusively on the X chromosome. And so if you are female and you have 2 X's, that means you have the opportunity to carry 2 different alleles for this trait. But if you are male, you only have 1 X chromosome. Your other one is a Y chromosome. So you only have the opportunity to carry the X-linked trait on 1 of your chromosomes. And something that we'll notice and kind of point out in a moment is that when we do sex-linked trait Punnett squares, we must include not only the actual sex, so XX for female and XY for males, but then which allele they are inheriting on their X chromosomes. And so you'll see these written as almost like exponents. They're short little superscripts, just like we saw with incomplete and codominance. And so here you have a man who has a recessive allele on his X chromosome, and you have a female who has 1 dominant allele on one of her X's and a recessive on the other X. So in setting this up, this particular problem set is talking about hemophilia, which is a very common X-linked trait condition. It's a recessive condition. And so you have to, because it's X-linked, you have to make sure that you have included the sex chromosomes and the alleles that might be carried on those chromosomes. And so this woman right here has an allele, but because she has a second X chromosome, she's not going to express this recessive trait because she has that dominant allele to sort of mask the recessive allele on the other X. But check out the man, he only has 1 X. And so whatever allele he has on his X, that is what he will show. If that were a dominant allele, he would show the dominant trait. If it were recessive, and in this case he is recessive, that means he shows this recessive condition, this blood clotting disorder for hemophilia. So let's check out the kind of offspring that they can create.
Although it is similar to a monohybrid cross, the Y isn't dominant or recessive. It's just kind of, no presence. In fact, there are only 2 ways a female can inherit hemophilia. If the father has the disease and the female is a carrier, or the father has the disease and the mother also has the disease. Many times, X-linked traits will be more common in males than in females. So there we go, X-linked inheritance, traits found on the X chromosome.
All right, and so using this example while we have it in front of us, let's look at the results of that cross. So here is a woman. Remember, this is the trait for hemophilia, which is a recessive condition. So you only express it if you have recessive alleles. Now the woman has, this is the second cross. Let's go back to the original cross we were looking at. There we go. So the woman has 1 dominant, 1 recessive allele. That means she is going to present as normal She will not have hemophilia, but she is considered a carrier because she is carrying this recessive allele, even though she's not showing the recessive condition. The man only has one X. That one X has a recessive allele on it, so he is going to show the recessive condition. He has hemophilia. So this is a normal woman that is a carrier crossed with a man with hemophilia. Check out their offspring. So they can have a daughter that is also a carrier, or a daughter that is a hemophiliac, two recessive alleles on these X's. They could have a male that is normal, or they could have a male that is expressing the hemophiliac condition. So let's go back in to our notes and let's write some stuff down. So X-linked traits, these are traits that are carried on the X chromosome exclusively. So when you are doing the crosses, you have to include the sex of the parents in the cross. Because these are only carried on the X chromosome, males only have the chance to inherit one allele, but females could inherit two alleles, one on each of their X chromosomes. So as a reminder, females are XX, so they can have an allele on both of those X's. Males are XY, they only get an allele on one of their chromosomes, on their X chromosome. Because males only have one X chromosome, X-linked or sex-linked conditions are most often seen in males. Because really whatever they have on that X is what they have. They don't have another X chromosome to potentially mask the effects of that particular allele. So what they've got is what they've got. Females have two X's, and so they have a little more opportunity to sort of cover up a particular trait as opposed to expressing it. Now, I will say that females, I used the term carriers a second ago. Females are the only ones that can be true carriers, because to be a carrier means that you are carrying an allele, but not expressing it. And we usually use that language to refer to heterozygote genotypes, one dominant, one recessive, particularly when the condition is a recessive condition. So they are carrying the recessive allele, but they're not actually expressing it because they have a second allele sort of overshadowing it. So females are the only true carriers in X-linked conditions, because to be a carrier means you have to have two possible alleles. And since females are the only ones with two X's and two potentials for alleles, they are our only carriers. Now, when we talk about X-linked or sex-linked conditions, many of these you will see are recessive conditions. And I put these little flies down here because a lot of fruit fly genetics deal with X-linked traits. So one of the practice sheets that you're going to do is actually almost exclusively about fruit flies, because it's such a common thing to discuss related to X-linked traits. So you'll see fruit flies for sure. If we look at, we're still taking a couple of notes here. If we look at the Punnett square, we have to do the cross, right? And then we have to really pay close attention to what the question is asking. And so I'm going to give you an example here. So let's say that this trait is all about being colorblind. So we're using the B for colorblind. Colorblind is a recessive condition. So in this case, you have a female that is colorblind. She's got two recessive alleles. It's a recessive condition. Both of her alleles have to be recessive for her to show this condition. And she is mating with a male that is normal, has normal vision. So he has a dominant allele on his X chromosome. So here's the cross, okay? Now, let me ask you a couple of questions, and this is what I mean by pay attention to what the question is asking. If the question says, what percent of the offspring are colorblind? Think about what you would say as that answer. What percent of the offspring are colorblind? If the question asks of the offspring, you're going to include all four possibilities here. So 50%, these two down here are actually going to be colorblind. So what percent of the offspring are colorblind? 50%. What percent of the males are colorblind? If the question says of the males, you can only count within the males. So there are 2 males, and 2 of the 2 will be colorblind. So now this question, if I switch from of the offspring to of the males, this is a new answer. This is 100%, right? What percent of the males are colorblind? 100%. All of the males, these are the males, are colorblind. So what percent of the offspring are carriers? Think about that. What would you say? 50% are carriers. Those are the females. What percent of the females are carriers? 100% of the females. Both of these females are carriers. So just pay attention to what the question is asking. If it's asking you to consider all of the offspring, your denominator here is all 4 possibilities. But if it's asking you to consider of a particular sex, your denominator changes, and you can only focus on those that are of the sex that the question is asking. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of practice, and you need to find the practice question in your packet, or the practice document in your packet that starts with this. So this is an intro into kind of what we've already talked about. But what's important here is that it's setting up dominant versus recessive inheritance, and sex-linked, usually X-linked is what we refer to, as a new pattern of inheritance, right? So this is different, again, different from what Mendel had normally talked about, which is why it falls still under the non-Mendelian genetics section of our notes. So these are traits that are carried only on the X chromosome. If it is an X-linked dominant trait, you have to have 1 dominant allele to show the trait. If it's X-linked recessive, then all of your X's, whether that's 2 X's if you're a female or 1 if you're a male, have to have the recessive allele. So let's look at this set of questions, okay? This is the top part of the document. I want you to focus on these 6 questions, and I want you to answer these right now. And when you are done and you're ready to see the answers, come back, unpause the video. But please, please, please do the practice. Don't just skip forward until you see the answers. Do the practice right now. So pause the video, answer these 6 questions, and come back. If you're back, here come the answers. So check yourself. Number 1, X-linked. These are traits that are inherited on the X chromosome. Number 2, which gender is most likely to have X-linked traits? Males, because really they only have 1 X chromosome, and whatever that X shows, the male is going to show. They don't have a second X chromosome to potentially mask a condition. Number 3, how many X chromosomes do males have? 1. Number 4, how many do females have? 2. Number 5, why does a single X chromosome that carries the allele for red-green color blindness cause males to be colorblind, but not females? Because red-green color blindness is recessive. And if the males have it, they have it. If the females have a recessive allele, they could potentially have a dominant one masking it. And so that's a benefit of having 2 X's for the females. And then number 6, who are our carriers? Females are our only carriers. All right, let's move on to the first real question set. So here's a practice problem. In fruit flies, the gene for white eyes is sex-linked. So red is dominant to white. Cross a white-eyed female with a normal red-eye male. So here's my caution to you. Remember, you must include, if you're crossing a white-eyed female, you need to include that she's female. So XX, and then put her white eyes, little r, on her X chromosomes. And then cross her with a normal red-eyed male. He's male, XY. Put his red eye trait on his X chromosome. So do the cross, answer the questions, come back to the video, unpause it when you're done, and come check your answers. There are your answers. So how did you do on those? Check, 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 check. This is an example of pay attention to what the question is asking. When you're ready, unpause the video, move on. Question number 2. You're going to do the same thing, a new practice question. This time, you have a heterozygous red eye female. So make sure she's female, XX. Then put her heterozygous traits on the X chromosomes. And she's crossed with a red eye male, XY. Put your red eye trait on the X chromosome for him. Cross them, answer the questions. Pause the video, come back when you're ready for the answer. Check your answers. So here are the genotypes. There's our female that's heterozygous. Here's our male that is red eyes. Cross them, questions. Unpause when you're ready to move on. Now we switch to hemophilia, which is that blood clotting disease. So if you have a female that is a carrier for hemophilia and a male that is normal. So what are their genotypes? Cross them, answer the questions, unpause the video when you're ready to check the answers. There's your answers. So give those a check. Here's our heterozygote, or here's our carrier female. Carriers are heterozygous. They carry the recessive allele, but they don't show it. Here's our normal man. Cross together, questions answered. These last two questions are going to be an exit slip. So I want to see how you are doing by way of an exit slip. And so if you will travel to Google Classroom and click on the document that is posted in Unit 5 that says X-linked exit slip, put the answers to these last two questions on that exit slip and submit it today. All right, when you're done, you're done.